My parents have never liked me. Back in the day, my mom and dad were the classic high school love story, prom king and queen vibes. They were totally into each other and had these big, wild dreams of jetting off to see the world right after they got their college diplomas. They wanted to experience everything, from eating street food in bustling cities to exploring ancient ruins. But then, out of nowhere, life threw them a curveball. My mom found out she was expecting a baby while they were both still in college, deep in study mode and far from ready to be parents. They had a tough choice to make, and at first, they leaned towards not having the baby. However, their parents, my soon-to-be grandparents, were totally against that idea. They insisted that the baby, aka me, had to be born. Because of the unexpected baby news, my mom's college experience took a major hit. She couldn't deal with the whispers, the stares, and the gossip that followed her around campus once people found out she was pregnant. So she made a tough decision to leave college and move back in with her parents. That's the scene where I make my entrance into the world. My mom, well, she didn't exactly throw a welcome party for me. She was pretty upset, to be honest. But on the flip side, my grandparents were over the moon about me. They showered me with all the love and care in the world. For a big chunk of my early years, I was under the impression that my mom was actually my older sister. The concept of her being my mom didn't click because, well, she hardly acted like one. She was mostly out of the picture, doing her own thing, and whenever I tried to snag a bit of her attention, I didn't get the warmest response. Screaming or ignoring me were her go-tos. And my dad? He was like a ghost to me. I knew I had a dad somewhere out there, but he was so absent that he might as well have been a character from a story. Despite all this, my parents were still a couple. They stuck together through the storm, navigating their relationship while dealing with the reality of having me, an unplanned child. Now, don't get it twisted. I totally understand that having me was not part of their master plan. They were young, had dreams, and suddenly had to face a huge responsibility they didn't sign up for. I was just a little kid who couldn't grasp why there seemed to be this invisible wall between us. I didn't get why they weren't more involved or why there wasn't that typical parent-child bond you'd expect. It was a tough pill to swallow, growing up feeling more like an outsider in my own family rather than a part of it. So even though things were pretty rocky with my mom and dad, my grandparents, on both sides, were pretty awesome. They would hang out with me, look after me when needed, and were just generally cool people to be around. By the time my dad got his college degree, I was already toddling around and starting to chat a little. It seems like seeing me grow up sparked something in him, maybe a bit of guilt or realization that he wasn't around much. So he began visiting me every weekend. At first, I didn't really know who he was. I just thought he was another friend of my grandparents. My mom wasn't thrilled about these visits. She'd tell my dad it was better to just leave me be, but my grandparents thought differently. They encouraged him to spend time with me, to build a bond. And that's how I finally figured out he was my dad, not just some guy who popped in now and then. Once my dad landed a job, things moved pretty quickly. He asked my mom to marry him, and they got their own place. Then my dad had this idea that I should live with them so we could be a proper family. My mom wasn't into this idea at all, but my grandparents, who were getting up there in years, really pushed for it. They wanted my parents to own up to their responsibilities. So, with a lot of back and forth, my parents finally agreed to take me in. I was 5 years old when I moved in with them, and let me tell you, it was not fun. I really didn't like living there. It felt like I was moving from a warm, loving home with my grandparents to a cold, unwelcoming place with my parents. So, moving in with my mom and dad was like stepping into a totally different world, and not in a good way. Imagine going from a sunny, happy place to a dark, stormy one overnight. That's how it felt for me. Every day, my mom would make it super clear that I should feel lucky just to be living there. If I messed up or did something she didn't like, she'd threaten to kick me out. My dad was pretty much a ghost to me. He worked all day and came home super late. On the rare occasions I tried to hang out with him, he'd just say he was too tired and needed space, basically telling me to go to bed because he couldn't deal with me right then. Life with my grandparents was full of love and warmth, but with my parents, it felt like they couldn't stand me. I was too little to really get why they acted this way, but I definitely felt like I didn't belong there, like I was some kind of burden. While other kids had toys to play with and got treated to ice cream now and then, I got none of that. There were even times I'd show up at school with my homework not done. When this happened, my teacher would call my mom to ask what was up. Then, my mom would take it out on me, calling me lazy and saying I needed to take care of my own stuff, like my schoolwork. It was a tough spot to be in, especially for a kid. I went from being cherished and looked after by my grandparents to feeling totally out of place and unwanted in my own parents' home. I was super scared of my mom. to the point where I started doing my homework all by myself right after school. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I did everything right, she'd start to see me differently. But that day never came. And my dad? He was like he was in his own world, not caring at all about what I did all day or how I was doing in school. As I got a bit older, I began to notice how different my situation was from other kids. You know, seeing other parents being super affectionate with their kids at school drop offs, giving them hugs and kisses, and just generally showing they care. I got none of that. It felt like I was living with two strangers, which was so confusing and made me wonder sometimes if I was even their real kid. Every now and then, I'd ask my grandparents about it when I visited them. They always told me that, yes, I was definitely the child of my parents, and tried to explain that my parents just hadn't quite figured out how to be grown ups themselves yet. On the other hand, my mom didn't miss a chance to say mean things to me. She'd make fun of everything about me, like my hair, my glasses, even my weight. She even said that if she had been in high school with me, she would have bullied me. Hearing something like that from your own mom is just bizarre and hurtful. Living through all of this was incredibly tough. It's like you were doing your best to navigate through a situation where you felt completely out of place and unwanted, which is heartbreakingly difficult for anyone, let alone a kid growing up. So, there was this time when the difference between my parents and my grandparents became crystal clear because of my milk allergy. My grandparents always knew about it and took it seriously, but my mom, not so much. She refused to believe I was allergic, thinking I was just trying to be trendy or something. She even said kids back in her day didn't have allergies like that. One day she pushed me too far, insisting I drink milk. The result? A scary trip to the hospital for me. That incident really shook things up. When the police came to talk to her about what happened, it was like a wake-up call for my mom. She never tried to give me milk again after that. And my dad, well, he was furious with her. For the first time, I saw him really stand up to her. She even started crying. My grandparents, they were there for me in a heartbeat, rushing to the hospital and staying by my side. There was a lot of serious talking going on while I was getting better. Something about that whole mess seemed to change how my parents acted towards me. My mom began to actually take part in my life, like waking me up for school and helping me get ready. My dad started to make time for me in the evenings, even tucking me in at night. I couldn't really understand what made them switch gears, but suddenly they were treating me more like a person. It was such a strange, unexpected shift after everything that had happened. So, after that major wake-up call, things at home started to change for the better. My mom actually began to show interest in my life, asking about school and stuff. My dad, too, started to include me in his activities, like watching football games together. It was during these moments that I really began to understand and connect with my parents. I think I was naturally empathetic because, despite everything, I didn't hold any grudges against them. We even started going to the beach together on weekends, which quickly became some of my happiest memories. I stopped feeling envious of my classmates because my parents were beginning to show me affection. It was a big deal. When I turned 15, I discovered I had a real talent for crocheting, something my grandma, my mom's mom, had taught me. Sadly, she had passed away by then, but I remembered how she would create these amazing things with her crochet hook and sell them at the local craft fair. She could make a few $100 showcasing her work, which was always so full of vibrant colors and intricate patterns. I was totally drawn into the world of crocheting, spending hours getting better at it, all while thinking about my grandma. Her creativity and entrepreneurial spirit really inspired me. So, taking a leaf out of her book, I decided to start making my own crocheted items. It felt like a way to connect with her legacy and also discover my own path in creating unique, personalized pieces. Inspired by my grandma's legacy, I decided to take a leap and set up my own little booth at the same craft fair where she used to shine. The reaction I got was nothing short of amazing. It was clear that what started as a passion could actually turn into a way to make money. Before long, word got out about my crochet work. I started receiving custom orders not just from classmates and friends, but from people throughout the community. It felt incredible to know each piece I made was special to someone, telling its own story. As my small business picked up, I found myself diving deeper into the craft. I began experimenting with all sorts of yarns, textures, colors, and patterns, challenging what I thought I knew about crochet. My creations transformed from simple items like scarves and blankets to complex pieces of wearable art and home decor that people loved. The more positive feedback and returning customers I got, the more I pushed myself to improve. When I started making good money from my crochet work, my grandma suggested opening a savings account for college. I was proud and excited to share this success with my parents, thinking they'd be impressed with how much I'd accomplished. But their reaction was the complete opposite of what I expected. They were shocked to hear about the money I was making, having dismissed my crocheting as just a silly hobby until then. When they realized it was more than that, they completely rejected the idea. My dad even threatened to destroy all my work, saying he wasn't busting his back at work for my education, just so I could waste my time on what he called stupid things. It was a harsh moment, seeing how differently we viewed my passion and success. Facing such an unexpected twist with my parents over my crocheting success was a real eye-opener. Their reaction to my earnings, demanding the money and then lashing out at my grandma when I said it was with her, showed their true colors hadn't changed at all. They were the same self-centered people I'd always known, only now their actions were directly threatening my future and my passion. My grandma stood her ground against them, refusing to hand over the money I'd earned through hard work and creativity. My parents' attempt to claim my earnings as their own was the last straw, making it crystal clear that they hadn't evolved past their selfish tendencies. It was heartbreaking to realize, but it also steeled my resolve not to let their views dictate my life. Understanding the risk of my parents possibly not supporting my college dreams, I knew I had to secure my own future. Crocheting wasn't just a hobby or a small side business anymore. It was my lifeline to a future they might choose not to provide for. So, I crafted a plan to ensure I could continue working on my designs and saving for college, away from their destructive influence. I began to tell my parents I was spending weekends at my best friend's house, a cover for me to work on my crochet projects at my grandma's place. My best friend was in on the plan, fully supporting me in keeping my passion and business alive despite my parents' disapproval. This lie wasn't something I was proud of, but it was necessary to protect my dreams and work towards a future they seemed intent on jeopardizing. Dealing with my parents trying to control and take the money I earned from crocheting was really tough. I couldn't just let go of my passion or the chance to make money from my successful side hustle, especially since it looked like my parents might not support my college plans. To keep working on my crochet projects and fill orders from clients, I started telling my parents I was spending weekends at my best friend's house. Actually, I was at my grandma's, crocheting and working on our business. My grandma played a huge role in all this, helping me grow my business and teaching me so much. I also got into using social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook to show off my work and connect with more people. This move from a small booth at a local craft fair to an online business was huge. My grandma and I even opened a bank account together to keep my earnings safe for college. I trusted her completely, and she was always there for me, unlike my parents, who seemed more interested in using my money for themselves. Then one day, my mom found out about my online business, and the fact that I was still doing it, even though they didn't want me to. She went through my phone without me knowing and discovered everything. This led to a massive argument, with my parents yelling at both me and my grandma. It was a real mess, but it made me even more determined to work for my future, my way. They demanded that I withdraw all the money I had earned and give it to them since they had raised me and taken care of me all my life. I was on the verge of tears while trying to make them understand that this was for my college and that I wasn't really doing any harm to anyone. My dad screamed that I'd gone behind their back and that he could not trust me anymore. My mother asked me to delete my Instagram page and stood right next to me to check if I was really deleting it. I cleverly deactivated my account instead so that later I could activate my account. Once I was free from my parents, then they implemented strict phone restrictions from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. They also started tracking my location and monitoring my entire internet history, with notifications triggered if I searched for anything deemed bad. Even innocuous things like shopping for underwear. I was allowed to go out with my friends only twice a week, but I had to come straight home afterwards. Otherwise, they would call me and my friends multiple times. Occasionally, I was allowed to hang out with my grandma for a couple of hours after school, but they banned me from doing any crocheting with her. Otherwise, they threatened to take away my phone and internet access. There were so many days that I just wanted to run away, but I was still 17 and had no way out. I requested my parents to let me have a part-time job at the local cafe, which they allowed, but told me that I had to pay them 30% of what I was earning. I agreed without any fights. I would give them 30% of my earnings every week, and the rest, 70%, I would give to my grandma to deposit in my bank account. My parents would continue to make my life difficult by regularly barging into my room at all times to check my room, go through my chats and emails, and monitor my location. If I didn't listen to them or follow their rules, I was either grounded or they would force me to give them more of my earnings that week, regardless of what my parents were putting me through. Icon, and traded on working hard at school and getting good grades. I knew that I needed to get into a good college to escape this life, so I worked my ass off the night before I was going to turn 18. I packed up whatever it was I had bought for myself and left other things like my clothes and my phone in the room. I made sure to wipe my phone clean so they would not find out anything about me. I also knew my parents would not allow me to take anything that they had brought for me, so I didn't take any of their stuff. The plan was already set. My grandma came to pick me up early in the morning so I could finally move in with her. My parents were shocked to see me moving out and started fighting with my grandma, saying that they were going to involve the police. I told them to go ahead since I was 18 now and could do whatever I wanted. My parents then tried to blackmail me and said how they would tell everyone about what an ungrateful daughter I was and that everyone would shun me for leaving my parents. But I did not care. They even threatened that they would not help me for college, but I just smiled since I had saved up enough and was even up for a scholarship, so I no longer needed their help. As I walked out of the house, I felt a mix of fear, relief, and determination. Little did I know my journey was about to take an unexpected turn. The first few weeks at my grandma's place were a breath of fresh air. The strict restrictions were lifted, and I could finally breathe without the constant monitoring. The first thing I did was buy myself a new phone and get a new mobile number. Next, I went to the bank with Grandma, took all my relevant documents so I could convert my minor account to an individual account. I was so happy to finally get my own card, an account where I no longer had to ask for anyone's permission. I also deactivated my Instagram account so I could get back to my crocheting business. My grandma was very supportive and even offered me a small space in her house to set up a makeshift studio so I could get back to crocheting. Just a week after I had moved out of my parents' place, I found out from relatives and old neighbors that my parents had set up a party where they were finally celebrating their independence. Apparently, they were extremely happy that this was the start of their new family, free from the burden of having me around, and were telling people how they finally could live child-free. They had invited other child-free friends and had posted multiple pictures of them laughing and drinking throughout the night with not a care in the world. Initially, the news, stung by the fact that my own parents was celebrating my absence just a week after I had left them, showcasing their newfound freedom, felt like a cruel twist of fate. My dad's parents were also shocked to hear them celebrating, and they tried to reach out to me. They would travel a lot in their RV, exploring around the country, so it had been years since I had talked with them. When they finally got my new number from one of my cousins, they immediately called me, asking about everything. I told them the truth about what had been happening between me and my parents and how I had left home. They were shocked to hear how my parents had been abusing me. They questioned me why I didn't reach out to them for help, but I told them about how my parents would monitor my phone, so I wasn't allowed to talk to a lot of people except a handful of friends and my grandma. This is when my dad's parents told me about how my parents never wanted me in the first place, but they thought they had changed over the years. Once I moved in with my parents and begged me to forgive them for not being there for me through all of this. They also talked with my grandma, who told them about the various fights she had with my parents in order to protect me after this. My dad's parents took it upon themselves to tell each and every family member about what my parents had put me through. Slowly, the news spread through my relatives and family. Friends and everyone started calling me and offering their support. I was surprised to see how sympathetic everyone was to my plight. Some even offered me monetary compensation, but I would refuse and tell them about my crocheting business and how they could help me by spreading the word so I could get more clients. This is how my business started to slowly pick up. During this time, I had been accepted into my dream college with a full scholarship. My life was finally about to change for the better. It wasn't very far from my grandma's place, so I could come and visit her every weekend and spend time with her at work on my crocheting. My dad's parents decided to give me their old car, which needed a bit of repairing, but was manageable. So it would be easier for me to come back to my grandma's place. During this time, one of my friends who had been working for a local newspaper reached out to me and asked me if she could write a story on me. Since there were not a lot of young entrepreneurs in our area who had their own business like me, and told me how my story could inspire other youngsters to find their own path. After some thinking, I agreed to sit for an interview. I honestly didn't think it was a big deal since my business still needed a lot of work. But nevertheless, I hope that if there was a kid out there like me stuck in a toxic environment, I hope that they would read my story and feel inspired from it. When my story came out, I felt surreal to see my own story in the paper. I know it's a very small achievement to be featured in your local paper, but for the first time in a very long time, I felt proud of the fact that I had worked so hard on my business despite all the difficulties. My grandma was extremely proud of me, and other relatives and friends started reaching out to me, congratulating me for this success. This was a new feeling since my parents had never supported nor complimented me about my hard work while growing up. My parents must have read this story as well, so they called my grandma to scream at her about how I betrayed them by going behind their backs. They told me and Grandma that since I had started the business while still living with them, I needed to not only give them credit publicly, since relatives had been bashing them ever since I told them about their controlling behavior, but that I needed to share with them my profits as well. They threatened to take me to court, but my grandma told them that I had done all the business under her roof, so they could try going to court over it if they wanted because they would lose. I was so pissed at how my parents were behaving that I wanted to scream and yell at them, but I knew I could not do that. So instead, I organized a small celebration and invited my close family members and friends so we could celebrate the success of my hard work and business. I was anyways going away to college, so I felt like I deserved one last hurrah with people who genuinely loved me. We had a great time throughout the night. Of course, what got spread to my parents, and I don't know how, but they got my hands on my new number, so they've been texting me about how I'm just an ungrateful daughter and about how they wish they never had me. My dad had even sent a long text about how he spent all his life providing for me. And yet here I was, wasting away my money by celebrating with other people. Aita for having a party to celebrate with my loved ones, when my parents also had a celebration after I moved out. Update 1. When I posted my story on Reddit, I had no idea it would blow up in just a few days. I've seen my story on TikTok, and it scares me that my parents might find out about this. For my sake, please pray that they don't find out anything now. As per the comments, I understand that a lot of people want me to block my parents permanently, and I plan on doing exactly that. However, I do want to send them a final email telling them about everything that they put me through so they know exactly what I have been going through. I am not a doormat like some of you have been calling me. I'm just a kid who had extremely toxic parents, and it's difficult for me to drop them. Society always teaches us about how our parents always want the best for us, but no one ever teaches us about what to do when you end up with toxic parents and how to cut them off. I understand if some of you are blaming me for letting my parents walk all over me, but please do understand that I am young, and I'm learning slowly to stand up for myself. Update 2. Hi everyone. Thank you to some of the people who have reached out to me with supportive messages and let me know about similar situations they have gone through now, as I had updated earlier. I did write an email to my parents. My grandma also helped me pen down my thoughts more clearly. I'm just going to copy and paste the email content here. Dear Mom and Dad, I've spent a considerable amount of time reflecting on our past present and the potential future of our relationship. It's with a heavy heart that I've come to the realization that for my own well-being and growth, I need to sever ties with you both. I have spent my entire childhood yearning for your love and attempting to meet your expectations, but for some reason, I was never enough. Over the years, I've worked tirelessly to understand the reasons behind your apparent dislike for me and strive to be accepted into your lives. But you both never accepted me. From the earliest memories when Mom forced me to drink milk despite my allergies to the times, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Your actions have shaped my perception of how toxic our family is. Yet through it all, I held on hoping for a change, for connection. That never happened, unfortunately. When I found solace and purpose in crocheting, thanks to Grandma's guidance, I thought it might bridge the gap between us. As I built my business, your attempts to undermine and control me only solidified my decision to break free from the toxic environment. Your insistence on claiming a share of my hard-earned money, threatening legal action, and attempting to control my celebrations only further highlighted how toxic you all are for me. I want you to understand that this decision is not an act of revenge or an expression of anger. It's an act of self-preservation, a step towards building a life that is free from toxicity and filled with love and support that every child deserves. I harbor no ill will towards either of you, but I need to prioritize my mental and emotional well-being. I thank you both for pushing me to become independent and for underestimating the potential within me. And I wish you both the best in your future endeavors. I hope you both are finally happy without me. I request that you respect my decision to not further contact. Let us part ways amicably. I won't lie, but I had tears while writing this email to my parents. I know that I should be strong and remember all the bad things they've done to me. But it's so hard to cut off your parents. As children, we are conditioned to love them, and it's difficult to come out of that thinking. After sending the email, I blocked them from everywhere. In a few days, I'll be going away to college, so I'm a bit nervous about it. My grandma and my dad's parents are going to help me move into my new dormitory. I'm excited about meeting new people and having new friends, and to everyone asking. My crocheting business is doing well, and I won't quit it regardless of my college. I love making unique designs, and this is my passion, so I will work hard to manage it with my studies. This is the only update I have for now. Update 3. Wow, it's been 6 months since my last update. I can't believe it's been so long and how different my life is now. First and foremost, I am thriving in college. The classes are challenging, but I am putting in the effort and maintaining good grades. I know in the long run, despite my crocheting business, I need a college degree to fall back on. I have also made some incredible friends in college, thanks to them. I even get more orders to crochet. College life has allowed me to explore new horizons and meet different people. It's a refreshing change from the isolation I felt back home. I even have a boyfriend now called Kyle. I mean, it's just been 2 months since we started dating, and we're still getting to know each other. He is a sweet guy, so we will see how this goes. Every weekend, I make it a point to visit my grandma. We've been working from her makeshift studio to fulfill our crochet orders. The business is booming, and the positive response from our clients is overwhelming. It's amazing how pursuing my passion has not only provided financial stability, but also a sense of purpose and fulfillment in my life. As for my parents, it's been a quiet 6 months since my heartfelt email. They haven't attempted to contact me. My grandparents informed me that my parents received a lot of flack from everyone. Hence, they decided to sell everything and move out of the country, likely seeking a fresh start away. I don't know where they are. Truth be told, I don't really care. The fact that they chose to leave without any attempt at reconciliation or even a single apology speaks volumes. I genuinely hope they find happiness wherever they've gone and can pursue the things that they've always wanted to do. It's time for me to focus on my own journey and continue building the life I have always dreamed of. I want to express my gratitude to all of you who've been following my story and offering words of encouragement. Your support has meant the world to me. If there's one lesson I have learned through all of this is the importance of surrounding yourself with people who uplift and believe in you. Thanks to my grandma and friends who believed in me, this will probably be my last update. Thank you, everyone.